All right, here we go. Me. Welcome back to Nick Lenz Comic Corner, Classic, Last, and Non-Classics. This is episode number 2909 and episode number 2803. First, discussing the first trade of collect issues from the last ever Adam series. I say last one because all they released since then is basically a few one-shots and like a back of feature in Action Comics. And that's all they've done with the Atom. This is All New Atom, Volume 1, which is known as My Life in a Miniature, which collects the first 6 issues of the ongoing series. Written by Gail Simone, yes, and also contained, there was also this debut, I gotta talk about this one shot here, Brave New World, which is basically his debut appearance in this book. Of course, this book also has to with different stories in it. Now, there is one story featuring the debut of the Monitor species. Basically, the point of the story is to promote Countdown. That's literally the purpose of it. Now, that is done by Tony Bedard. There's also an OMAC story in here, which is done by Bruce Jones, which debuts a new OMAC who's got this metal skin and he's kind of like a robot. This is a lead into the OMAC project. Of course, it's a Martian Manor feature, which is discussed already in the Martian Manor trade. Now, there's also an Uncle Sam Freedom Fighters trade done by Justin Gray and Jim Palmiotti. Basically, it's just a backdoor pilot into a first of a few books featuring the Freedom Fighters and Uncle Sam. That's really the point of it. There is also a Creeper story in here, which that's set up for an actual Creeper miniseries by Steve Niles. Now, those thinking, who the heck is Steve Niles? Well, he's the writer of a comic book that was adapted to a film. You may have heard of it. It's called 30 Days of Night. He has a story set in Alaska featuring vampires in Alaska. And him writing the Creeper is interesting. Yes. Now, there's also a Trials of Shazam story in here. And all this book is this story here is a backdoor pilot to the Trials of Shazam 12-issue maxi series. Which, at the time, this was the last Shazam book published for years until, let's see, I think there was monthly, but the last ever series that was basically not Alta Continuity. I think, next one after this was probably the Jeff Johns book, which was Collect and Trade. Roy Cheeto, just basically him, his little adventure, takes place in the only events of the issues, which it's surprisingly there. Now, in the case of basically the first 6 issues, they basically show off this guy called Dwarf Star. He's a serial killer, and he dresses like he's like he wears an outfit similar to Protector from Marvel Comics. Yes, where it's like blue with a little white. No, it looks like Protector from Marvel. That's it. Protector was basically Marvel Boy, who at one point was Captain Marvel. He became Protector later on. And he carries a belt which contains Dwarf Star. Basically, the first issue is, here's the thing. Ray Palmer has gone missing. He has completely disappeared from DC Comics. Yep. Basically, the reason why he disappeared is because of Vince's identity crisis. So, I guess they said, we need a new Adam. So, let's get this guy called Roy Cheeto, who is Asian, by the way. Yes. And he basically finds, he's also a former student of Ray Palmer's, who becomes a teacher at Ivy in Ivytown. You know, Ray Palmer's hometown. Yes, where in this book comes a teacher. We see him basically have his little side quest, basically the first issue. Finding Ray Palmer's belt and basically just, he used first time and created his own costume, which is an update of an old Ray Palmer costume. And throughout the book, basically, there's a student who has a thing for Roy and Ryan, and then there's this tall woman named Professor Zoll who's got a thing for him too. And then they go on a date together, and it turns out Professor Zoll is actually Wonder Woman villain Giganta, who puts him in spirit. She tries to swallow him while she's basically giant sized and butt naked at a drive-through. Not drive-through, a drive-in. Yes. Of course, he gets out, no problem. There's also this weird subplot here when Dwarf Star shows up toward the end of the thing, where Roy's father shows up requesting him coming home. And he's like, no. Because he has a job, he has friends, and he's happy here. And after talking with his father, he accepts the problem. Now, my guess is Gail Simone. She must have known about the unmasking for Rob, because this scene is very much like the scene from Rob in 125. Actually, it was like 124, where you have Jack Drake telling Tim to come home. This, of course, was before Identity Crisis, by the way. Where he's like, no, I'm happy. And they argue for a while. And here was the thing that Gail Simone did that Bill Willingham did something really stupid. So, we have these spectre fighters find out their son's a superhero. And, of course, he's keeping it secret for everybody else. In the case of Tim's case, he had to quit being Robin over this. Over his dad finding out. Roy Cheadle, nope, he was like a dude, no problem. And Dwarf Star himself gets trapped in the Microverse thanks to a battle with Roy Cheadle, where he takes off his belt and he traps him there, and he presumably, who knows if he shows up ever again. But that's kind of the first story arc. It's actually really good. Yes, I'm glad Gail Simone did something better than what they did over in Batman. Yes, as much as I love Batman, it's like after... Now, in the case of some Bat books, Nightwing had a slight dip. Obviously, the worst it got, basically, was at 93, and by the time after he came back, of course, Devin Grayson had a brief thing. I would say the book became good again when Marv Wolfman wrote the book with him and Tomasi. These two in a way practically saved the book, but couldn't keep him canceled. In the case of Robin, well, from the moment he left up until he came back, it seems like you read that book and it's like DC had no idea what to do with this book. It's like Chuck left and the book basically took a big nosedive. Like, the worst it got was the Wanted story arc. That was awful. I would say Beechin slightly put it up. Chuck Dixon basically brought out of the dirt. Then he got moved to hell. For no reason. Yep. But moving on from that, let's talk about Vigilante. Oh, by the way, I'll give the opening trade for All New Adam a 9 out of 10. Next up we have is Vigilante, Volume 1, Issues 37 to 50. The final 14 issues of the book. So, throughout these issues, it's found out that thanks to Adrian Chase becoming the Vigilante again, he's become mentally unstable. And leads to a very loosely connected issue. Starts from 37 to about 44 here. So, in order to keep his sanity in check, well, for one thing, Harry Steen quits the police force and joins up with Vanilla Voss of the agency. And this was sort of a precursor to Checkmate. That's basically the whole point of agency. You read this book and then later check, oh, it's a precursor to Checkmate, which kind of it is. And of course, Vigilante works with him. And then, of course, at one point he goes to Gotham City, which Harvey Bullock is drawn really weird in this book. And he tells Batman, oh, yeah, he works the feds. Yep. And there's also a subplot here where, okay, first he's looking for Blackthorn, and then Blackthorn shows up in his apartment in issue 45. Like, she shows up in the most bizarre way possible. He takes out his gun. By the way, he's in his tidy whities when this happens in 45. He takes out his gun, does not put his costume on, or any clothes, points out who it is, and he opens the door, and she proceeds to kick the door open with the chainsaw there. She begins to chat for him for a bit, and then she begins to walk up to him, take off her top, and they have sex. I am not kidding. That's literally what happens in this issue. And they have sex several times over the last 6 issues of this book. Yes, at one point, he ends up hitting her Yes, he hits her during a brief scuffle over whatever. And of course, the cops closing it toward the end of the book. And, like, he's become so mentally unstable. Adrian Chase, in the final issue, commits suicide by shooting, like, presumably shoot himself in the head. And I'm so happy that the artist of this book didn't show it. All we see is him pointing on his head, like, right around here. And then we see a panel of his mask and his costume covered in blood. Blackthorn comes back. She was actually saying to him about the remaining issues. And, like, she is shocked what happens. So he is buried. She is there at the funeral. She's not mad at him committing suicide, just sad it happened. Now, despite the fact Marcy King is credited as being the remaining issue of this book, I did not see her in these issues. It's like, once he became Vigilante again, she was dropped for the book. Actually, she did appear for a couple issues where she became mentally unstable. Yes, where she was committed to a hospital. And she was never seen again. I gotta admit, these issues were actually well written. I gotta admit, basically, Paul Kupperberg does a better job handling mental issues than Tom King did with Heroes in Crisis. And you know the weird thing about Adrian Chase? Yes, he did die. But here's the weird thing. The guy never came back to life. He's still freaking dead. You would think, oh, did he come back in, like, did he come back in some book? Like, did he come back in post-Flashpoint? Well, he was briefly appeared in Day of Judgment. Aside from that, nothing. Yes, and for some reason they had him appear where he was. He did appear in Arrow, and I wasn't a fan of who really is on the mask. Because they have, that the alias of Adrian Chase was Prometheus. I'm like, okay. And then they have, like, and this is why it's always, and then of course they have Vigilante in the show, and they unmask him, and it's not Adrian Chase. It's some original character from the show who was a partner of the current Black Canary at the time, and he had healing powers, like Wolverine. I'm like, really? This is so freaking stupid. What was wrong with using Adrian Chase? And then apparently they used Vigilante version of Adrian Chase on the Peacemaker. Yes. But, in the case of this book, I'm going to give my final thoughts on this book. Because this book was a bit mixed, per se. I would say Wolfman's run, Wolfman / Alan Moore stuff, because Alan Moore just continued what basically Wolfman was doing with this book. It was okay. It wasn't terrible. I would say the most interesting Wolfman did was have guest appearance by Cyborg. Aside from that, the first ending was okay. Second ending was a lot better. I would say the best thing happened with this book was Paul Kupperberg's writing. Because I think we need to go over this book, and this is my honest opinion on the matter. This guy made the book sell really well. I wasn't reading at the time the book came out. This was the 80s. I think by the time this book ended, like, I was just bored when the series ended in 88. Keep this book only lasted just for a few short years, and the two or three books came afterwards were never as long as this. Nope. And I think the reason why this book sold so well, because of Paul Kupperberg's writing. Yes, I think that was the reason why. And it's a weird thing, he never came back as a Black Lantern zombie. You're thinking, really? Yeah, he never did. By the way, there was a news article in the book where he was outed as the Vigilante. Like, city judge is the Vigilante. Yeah. I did think it was an interesting idea in the book where he quit Spider-Man no more style and having two stand-ins, because the book is called Vigilante. You gotta have vigilantes. I would say of the two who replaced him, I'd say the second one was a better vigilante than actually the other one was. The other one was basically one from violent and kill police officers. He was a judge too. I also like the fact that the book had consequences for its actions. And here's also something really weird about this book, because at the start of this book, Adrian Chase has got this vehicle that serves as headquarters when he's vigilante. His whole thing was that he would kill people who was able to escape the justice system due to a technicality. That was his MO the entire book. And then, they changed it to where he becomes mentally unstable after being vigilante for a while. And they had him get away from that. And either that this was Paul's idea to put him back in the mask, or this was probably an editor's idea. I don't know. I have not asked him about this at all. Now, the only way you can find this book in trade paperback is The Vigilante by Marv Wolfman. That's the only place you can find it. It only contains the first 11 issues and, New Teen Titans number 2, which is back to this very book. I definitely think reviewing this book was a good idea, especially since, this is a book I really enjoyed reading. I read this book several years ago on this website, and I just loved every issue. I loved Paul Cupmark issues. I think that he was best thing about this book. Wolfman was okay. He had some good ideas, but it didn't feel fleshed out. But the one thing also interesting, though, is that once Paul took over the book, you know that interesting supporting cast? You know, the supporting cast they had when the book started? One apparently died about a year into the book, though he came back in the volume 3 of the book. But as for the vehicle itself, that completely disappeared. Also, eventually, his motorcycle disappeared, too. Yeah, it's like when Paul took a book, it's like the motorcycle was they got rid of that, they got rid of the wagon. It's like, make him a judge. Okay, not a bad idea. Only lasted about, if you think about it, about a year and a half, which not bad for a story arc for that. Yes, I think him coming into unstable, like him put back in the costume, was an interesting idea, and either he probably knew the book was getting canceled. It is surprising. Some books nowadays very rarely last 50 issues. If they do, they are really, really lucky. I remember there was this joke a few years ago where someone said, Marvel is afraid of issue 50. They're afraid of this issue. It's like, oh, this book is getting close to issue 50. Restart it! That was the problem. But this book? Nope, they end issue 50. Nowadays, books end issue 50. What seemed like it should never end at. Now, did I think book continue without Adrian Chase when he died? No. I highly doubt it. And also, the best way you can also describe the last year of this book, it felt like a lot of setup for Checkmate. Kind of in a way, like Blackthorn was introduced in this book. She became a recurring character in that book. Harry Steen, a character who was primary in that book too. That seemed like, to me, it seems like this book, when Cupmark, he basically, I would say during the last year of this book, he was playing seeds for Checkmate. He probably knew Checkmate was coming, because he created it. So, let's plant seeds of Vigilante, and let's see how it goes. And he got a Checkmate book, which was fantastic. Loved every issue of it. And I tweeted this to Paul on Twitter, and he was shocked to hear the fact that only one issue of the entire book is in trade. An issue that's part of the Jonas Directive. And nothing else of that book. Not even this awesome Peacemaker book is in trade. And that was loose adapted for the Peacemaker TV show. You would think DC would put that in trade. Nope, they didn't. Excuse me, what did DC do? They launched new miniseries for him and a one-shot. Yep. But not much to say about Vigilante Volume 1. Before we move on to Volume 2, I'm going to work on this series, Damage. I figure why not? This is not a bad idea to do. Think about Damage is. Damage is a character who is the biological son of Al Pritt. Yes. And this one was split into 2 separate videos when I review this book because it's 20 issues. And I figured that'd be a good idea. I did the same thing with Power of the Atoms. Why don't I do this one too? And that's finished this very book. I'll move into volume 2, which is really short. It's like 6 issues by Bruce Jones. We'll talk about that later. Okay, so that's a particular view. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications, and do not dislike button. Next up, Chain Soldier. Okay, next view. Bye.